All right, welcome to If Prices Could Talk. Today we're doing a pricing in the news rundown of headlines from the last several weeks. Usually we do a lot of B2C stuff, but these last few weeks there's been tons in B2B. So we've got Amazon, Microsoft. There is some EV market stuff, Tesla. So we've got a range of big logo headlines. So this is like we're doing takeaways, learnings, implications, and overall trends from these news headlines. So let's start with the first one here. Okay, so this is in the Wall Street Journal. The headline is Inside Amazon's Secret Operation to Gather Intel on Rivals. So the main takeaway for me with this one, so this is like there's a secret Amazon program. This is how the article lays this out. It was called Project Curiosity, disguised as a retail business. This business called Big River Services operated in multiple countries, and the idea behind it was to understand the experiences of sellers on various marketplaces and gather information on competitor pricing. They've denied all of like kind of the seemingly shady things about this since this article came out, but the idea was that they were creating fake brands and identities to avoid revealing their connection to Amazon. It says team members attended competitor conferences while posing as employees, and some employees felt uncomfortable with the deceptive nature of the project.
Speaking very broadly, competitor intelligence is really, really valuable and important, right? We talk to our clients often and want to get an understanding of what the competitive market for their respective situations are, and ultimately how they stack up in terms of performance relative to competitive alternatives, whether that's direct competitor or other competitors. So the why behind it is likely pretty self-explanatory. But when you're getting into the article itself and some of what you were just explaining, Tracy, particularly if there's these practices where they're going and posing as people that there aren't, that introduces a concept of, is what they are doing ethical or illegal? And that's a line that you certainly don't want to cross, because there can't be any element of collusion. But that being said, I do understand the desire and the need to build something up to say this is how we are gathering competitive intelligence, particularly for a company like Amazon. And the fact that it's secret, I mean, I don't know, I wouldn't imagine any company would go out there and publicize how they go and get competitive intelligence. That's an internal operation that most companies do. But it's really the execution of it and whether or not they're doing something that's wrong that this article brings into question.
When I read it, it didn't seem like there was anything necessarily illegal about it.
Yeah.
Ethical is absolutely a question. It's interesting to think about it from the other frame. Like if it was a small guy trying to get the process down on Amazon by signing up for a vendor account and understanding the workflow so they can better compete against it, I don't think it would be a news story. We wouldn't be reading about this right now. But in the reverse, they're already such a powerful company that tries to disrupt, whatever market they enter. So I think people are just more sensitive about that, even though the practice is probably very commonplace.
I was just like, okay, so the right way to do this is just with anything that's public facing information, right? As opposed to like going in disguise and taking screenshots of your competitors' pricing, for example. But if it's not explicitly illegal, it just, I guess, like makes people scratch their heads at Amazon's ethics.
Like most news stories, some of these things get a little bit ahead of itself, because in reality, most companies are keeping an eye on their competitor in some way, shape, or form.
Right.
I don't know this to be true or not, but I wouldn't be surprised, one of the first Teslas that came off the lot, that a competitor in China or a competitor here took it and looked at all the reverse engineering components of it and tried to look back of how the battery's installed, how this is done or that's done. I mean, that happens, right? I mean, that's just the nature of business, of understanding your competitors. Now, is it illegal? Is it ethical? What's the difference? Those are questions we can debate all day long, but to think that it doesn't happen or it won't happen or shouldn't happen, I think that's a little naive. I think there's elements of it that happens in almost every company, and I think Pete hit the nail on the head, which is if it's a small company doing these tactics, I don't think anyone would blink an eye. Because it's Amazon, if it was Microsoft, we would think the same thing. If it's whatever, fill in the blank of a large trillion-dollar company, literally $1 trillion, and we have a problem with it. If it's a mere $10 million startup, no issues or problems. Keep at it. Keep going. It's customer research or competitive research.
All right, well, let's talk about Microsoft. So this is the next headline. This is Reuters. So Microsoft to separate Teams and Office globally amid antitrust scrutiny. So this was like previously Microsoft Teams was bundled. Now it is unbundled. Salesforce, it seems like actually started this because they own Slack and they were like, hey, not fair. So the argument is that they had an advantage and limited customer choice.
My only comment is history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. Just think Netscape and Internet Explorer 30 years ago. This is the same story, right? Bundling that product, Teams in this case, with the Office 365. It's a free incremental cost. And now, we use it. A lot of our clients use it.
Yeah.
And therefore we're not Slack customers. And I think Slack's upset about that.
It's interesting, right? Because I went through, as I was reading the article, I kind of swung, in different ways from side to side, because Slack is basically saying, hey, we're not that differentiated. If you start using Teams, you're not going to use us. I mean, are they trying to say that their product is a Me Too product? If it's either Me Too or less valuable than Teams, I mean, that's basically the signal you're sending, because if it was a better product, I can go, yeah, you can have Teams for free, or you can choose a better product that we're building that's going to run efficiency for your company, right? And so it's on one hand, it's kind of signaling, hey, we're just nothing more than a regular commodity product. But on the other hand, I can understand if you're making it easier to install, the switching cost becomes an issue. So you not only have to be differentiated, but you have to be differentiated by a significant amount to be able to switch somebody from one platform to the other, and that becomes an issue. So I can see the other side of the problem, but if I was Slack, I'd be a little bit careful in bringing some of these things up, in order to do it the right way, instead of just signaling that they may be just a commodity.
It's really interesting because this feels like just a perpetual problem that is going to occur with Microsoft and companies like it, meaning that they have this inherent competitive advantage where people are using Microsoft products on a regular basis. You boot up your computer, and there's a lot of people out there that have Windows on their computer, and therefore they're going to load up. They're going to load up Internet Explorer, and now perhaps Edge. And there's like little things that Edge perhaps does that just integrate better with your day-to-day, meaning like the ability to go use Microsoft Copilot and just ask questions and things like that. Or like another very relevant, more recent example is internally for a while, I was using Calendly just to set up meetings and things like that. Microsoft now has, in essence, an equivalent feature that is built into their ecosystem. It integrates really, really well with Outlook, so you have that benefit. But then there's countless use cases where literally the exact same thing is happening. Pete, you brought up Internet Explorer, Teams, Calendly. There's probably 4 other things where that could happen. And then you could potentially even say the same thing about companies like Apple, because they have this ecosystem that they have built via your iPhone, and they're using that competitive advantage to kind of either bring in additional revenue or fence off competitors from infringing on their user base. So yeah, I imagine it's going to be a bit of an uphill battle for these companies to climb, to fight that, particularly in the scenario where they're not that differentiated.
I also don't like the government getting involved in some of these things. I'd rather have a little bit more of a free market, because you're right. Microsoft has the ecosystem. Apple has the ecosystem. Samsung is trying to get into that ecosystem, right? So I mean, people are, you've got competitors. Consumers have choices. My thing is, I'm trying to take a look at it from a consumer's lens. I have a choice whether I use Teams or Zoom or whatever it is, and I can pick and choose what I want based on what my needs are. As long as the consumer has a choice and I can opt in and out, then I'm good. If all of a sudden, if I have an Apple product and I can't take something off and put something on, then I think it becomes a huge issue, and I think that's illegal. You just can't do that. But as long as I have the choice and the ability to be able to swap things and use best of breed, essentially, people can give me stuff for free all day long. I'll just use best of breed to my needs. That's it.
Or charge for it, and you pay a little bit extra because you're getting something else.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. that happens in, even in technology stacks, right? I mean, this is technically a tech stack. So if you look at our infrastructure from an analytics perspective or whatever tech stack, you can go to AWS and get everything in one bill, if that's what you want. But people typically want best of breed based on what their needs are, and they cut and paste different things, and they put an environment together that fits their needs. And they should be allowed to do that because it's specific and unique to what my needs are.
Unrelated point, it's interesting. I bet Microsoft keeps Office price the exact same, charges separately for Teams, and actually make more money as a result of this.
I think they have that the pricing in the bottom of the article, a little bit of what they could be charging. I have a feeling that's probably what's going to happen.
Yeah.
They'll probably lose a little bit from just, the switching cost type thing, but I don't think they're going to be in a bad spot.
All right, let's talk about EV markets. This next article was from Electrek. So this is Goodyear launches a new EV tire, but are EV tires worth it? Question mark. I didn't realize, by the way, okay, so this is like the tires wear down faster with electric vehicles. I'm sure you guys knew that. I did not know this. So there's the weight of the batteries, and then also because the cars, and Pete, you had sent this, the cars accelerate harder with electric motors.
Yeah.
What is also standing out to me about this is like the electric vehicle general public perception appears to be crumbling. And I don't know if that's just because of what comes my way, but when people are worried about the charging infrastructure and they're worried about all this weird PR about doors freezing and stuff over the winter, I feel like there's just been a lot about electric cars in the last couple of months.
It's interesting. It's not something you think about. I don't have an electric vehicle, but I think of them as being very low maintenance, low cost to own once you have it, right? Because you basically just over the air software updates, and there's just so few moving parts that they don't need a lot. And then this EV transition has kind of opened up this new market, or refocuses people's decisions when they choose tires because of exactly that reason. You can get, the difference in mileage that you get or range in the EV can be like, very large. It could be, 50, 100 miles per charge if you have the right or the wrong tire. And then how much does it cost to replace that every so often? So it's just interesting how that is enabling some premium and low cost solutions in this sort of sleepy market.
So I'm a bit of a pessimist when it comes to these things, because I think most car enthusiasts know if you buy a high performance car, you're going to have to change your tires out. I don't know why this is news. Like, I mean, why is it new? Like if you drive an M3, your torque is high. You're going to have to replace your tires. I mean, F1 racers replace their tires for a reason. You have a high performance car, you're going to replace your tire more often. I don't understand. Like, it's amazing to me how people, bucket these things as like news, because it just really isn't. So you're not paying for oil changes. So you're going to have to pay a little bit sooner for your tires, and you have to keep them updated. And there's, like Pete said, there's now room for innovation to make it, less slick, be able to withstand the torque that's out there. Okay, so there's room for innovation, and you should get paid for that innovation that you're bringing to the market. So I think it's a fairly efficient system. There's a need, and there are solutions that are out there, and you have to be willing to pay for it. As a consumer, these are all choices I have that I choose to make. And there's no perfect scenario that's out there. Everything is a trade-off, and this is part of the trade-off of owning a high performance vehicle.
Maybe it's news because the performance driver already knew that, but the everyday family sedan owner is like, oh shoot, like this is different than what I typically used to do.
Yeah, maybe.
I was going to make a similar comment where change is hard, and now that there's broader adoption of EVs that are going beyond, say, the early adopters, people that are doing massive amounts of research into the pros and cons of having an EV versus a fuel injection car. People are going out there and they're saying, okay, I'm seeing these things on the road. It seems reasonable. It's nice not to have to pay for gas. It's nice not to have to pay for lower maintenance. And then you start to get this EV and you're like, oh crap, I have to change the tires that often? I didn't have to do that with my minivan or sedan, and now I do. So I think it's partially due to the fact that it just wasn't that well known for the mass market, and this is another thing that has to be done. And it's more of just changing habits, changing expectations in the market. And when you click on the article, I could see people come across it and be like, yes, I absolutely, I've got to pay for tires every 5,000 miles now, and I'm used to doing it every 25,000 miles.
Tracy, you brought up the other thing. I think that this is a sort of, the media is kind of picking up on the overall snowball effect of the momentum against EV. And I have a friend who they used to own with the entire family, had like 3 Teslas. And over the last 4 months, they started getting rid of them. And I didn't really notice. It was finally, I had a conversation with them a week ago, and I was like, what, you got another car, you replaced the Tesla, what's going on? And they go, we have a friend who's a firefighter, and apparently in the Phoenix area, there's been a few homes that have got caught on fire because the Tesla batteries are blown up. So now they're like, I don't want to take a chance. It's probably an anomaly, right? So I'm not trying to say that there's an inherent issue or problem here, but you hear these stories, and I think it's interesting. Consumers with EVs behave like we were more towards that bleeding edge, that early adopter of technology. And these issues are coming up because there's no longitudinal study of these new products, right? And now this longitudinal effect is happening where we're figuring these little things out. And I think these consumers are realizing, wait a minute, I'm not really an early adopter. I'm actually a laggard, and I want to be a laggard, but I can't now because I already bought it. And now I got to kind of come back. And this pendulum is swinging to who I really am in that life cycle, which is I'm not an early adopter. Because I think early adopters are probably like, yeah, there's going to be problems. There's going to be a problem in my charging station. There will be a problem with recalls. There will be issues because I'm an early adopter. Technology has problems, and those bugs are going to get worked out over time.
But that's offset because my heated seats now heat up in 3 seconds versus 4 minutes.
I tell you what, I was in your car, and those heated seats came very handy last week in Chicago.
Chicago Naples.
I can't complain about those heated seats.
All right, let's talk about, so this is Yahoo Finance. Next headline, smartphone maker Xiaomi switches from Apple to Tesla Challenger as its first EV racks 120,000 orders in 36 hours. So these guys launched their first car in December. They're intentionally selling at a loss to gain market share. It seems like they expect to be profitable soon, but they are Apple's Chinese competitor and are mostly up against Tesla, which is interesting. It just kind of felt like it came in very hot. And also, like in between this, since they launched the first car, and now Apple also ducked out of Project Titan and shut all that down.
Yeah, the one more layer is, I think Xiaomi is going after the mass market, so the under 30K, sort of mass market area, which is, I think, the critical point. If they were in a category of $150,000+ cars, I think we would talk about them a little bit different. But now that they're coming in to the mass market, I think that creates the conversation about competitive direction here with EVs.
All right, so where do we start with this one? Yeah.
I can start by the first thought I had when I read it is, where's the demand? I think that's the question that I have is, I have a feeling there was a lot of pent up demand in COVID. Then it came out, there was issues with, there are no cars on the lots. There were issues with chips. There's so many other, supply chain issues. And I think people, in my opinion, I haven't seen the data, but I think car manufacturers over manufactured. And I think there's a lot of vehicles that are out there. And I think we're going to start seeing more and more discounts, more and more sort of, deals that are out there to move inventory that's out there. I was just looking at a RAV4 as an example, and a used RAV4 2 years old was like 35,000. And if I go on and buy a 2024, it's at like 36,000. So it's just really, there isn't that much of a difference that's there, and that's without any negotiation or discounting or whatever that could still happen. So I think the pricing for car manufacturing in general is kind of volatile. And then if you add EV to it and you add all the competition to it, I'm just very unsure the demand overall is there for something like this, even though Xiaomi got 120,000 people to commit to buying it already in that announcement. But I think those 120,000 was in China, right? I don't think it was in the US or outside China, right?
China.
So I think that's a different market also.
Yeah,
They have a better name recognition out there than they would here.
What I found kind of interesting is within the article, they said that they made a lot of comments around the cost play and the fact that they're losing money on every single vehicle. They're spending a lot more than competitors, specifically Tesla. I think they said they're spending like 10 times more on labor. So I think what I interpret is a couple things. One is they're trying to communicate that their cars, despite the fact that they're making a cost play are cheaper, are on par or perhaps even better from a value perspective because they're putting so much effort in these. So they're telling the market that, hey, we're getting these things cheap right now. They're discounted, we're losing money, and that's setting the stage for them to increase prices in the future as they push adoption. But then he's also telling the market that we're okay, we'll be around for a while, we're willing to take the loss on these vehicles because we're trying to scale and we have enough cash reserves to fight the storm right now. So I found that kind of interesting because they are trying to make a value play, set the stage for future price increases as they push for market share in China, which, there's just heavy competition in right now with Tesla going in, getting approval with FSD, all the waves about BYD coming in, and now Xiaomi starting to make some waves.
Yeah, something slightly unrelated to the article, but similar to that point about the 10-to-1 spending ratio on the labor. It's like in this high interest rate environment, or potentially rising in some cases, or at least previously, it sort of widens the moat, right? Like if Xiaomi has all the cash reserves, then other people won't be able to catch up and invest the capital needed to kind of get to that scale in this industry. So it's an interesting strategic play in that way. And then there was a separate article sort of on BYD's pricing in different countries and how they kind of use penetration pricing in some countries like China, whereas if you look at their European prices, it's still lower than BMW EV alternatives, but like 2x of what they charge in China. So they're kind of using what we would say is the value-based or differential pricing in the right way. Like the next best competitive alternative is different in those regions.
One of the questions I have that's interesting is they're really going after the mass market, and I don't know how long that mass market is going to last for. Meaning, I think there's going to be an evolution of the transportation market holistically, where individual vehicles, I question the long-term efficacy of individual. It's already the greatest asset you can buy with untapped capacity, right? That's sitting in your driveway, basically. It's just the utilization rate based on the capacity is just really, really low for an asset for that type of price point. So I don't know. I mean, it's great that these competitors are coming in, because I believe the higher the competition, the better it is for the consumer at the end of the day, which is fantastic. I love it. I want more companies to come in and make products to give consumers more choices. I think that also makes it more efficient from a pricing perspective. But I question the efficacy long-term of just the transportation market holistically. I just don't know if individual vehicles are going to exist 25 years from now, 20 years from now. I just don't know. So I find it very interesting that they're going after these segments. And I'm wondering if there is, besides vehicles, if there is a platform, going back to the Microsoft conversation and going back to the Apple conversation, that whether there is a play here that's more software ecosystem type of play rather than an actual vehicle play that's there.
Mm-hmm. All right, for next time. We've got a few more, but let me schedule another time. We'll finish here and pick up in the next episode. Thank you.
Sounds good.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
See you guys.